The New Orleans Saints 2025 schedule prediction. How will Tyler Shough look at starting quarterback? Ladies and gentlemen, CBS Sports is the backdrop. They are going to go through the Saints schedule, predict wins and losses, and we are going to react to each and every one of those wins and losses. We're even going to talk standard deviation in this video. First, last night, I was in the CBD getting dinner. I got an Uber back. When I got in the Uber, it was a classy Ford SUV. It's like their fully EV SUV. It's awesome. It is amazing. It looks awesome in there. Super cool car. But I'm on the way back. The driver says, "Hey, do you have a YouTube channel?" Boom. And he said he's a huge fan. My man's name's Albert. Big shout out, Albert. He said, I watch every day. It's surreal having you in the car. And we talked Pelicans. We talked Joe Dumars. We talked the Saints. I almost told him, hey, take the scenic route, go across the causeway, just so we could talk even more ball. Big shout out, Albert. It is always fun, always humbling to meet supporters and viewers of the channel. It always makes my day, always blows my mind. So this video is for Albert. Get on down in the comments below. Put the strong arm emoji in the comments for Albert. All right. Again, if I could have if I could request an Uber every ride, it'd be my boy Albert. Here we go. Okay, so we're going to talk about this. So wins and losses are very difficult to do preseason because, if you have 10 coin flip games, you could theoretically win each game, right? But if it's a 50-50 shot, even though you may be better than a team, you could drop the game. So it's hard to just look at a schedule and say, well, blank team is better than blank team, so win. All of a sudden, every single team is a 10 to 15 win team. And that's just not how it plays out. So what the better thing to do is to figure out the range, is to figure out, all right, what is the low point? What is the high point? And that's what we're going to try and do today.
In New Orleans in 2025, new head coach Kellen Moore making his head coaching debut, and a new starting quarterback after Derek Carr announced his retirement earlier this year. That new bombshell to hit the Villa, first-round draft pick Tyler Shough. He's the first-rounder quarterback that the Saints have taken since Archie Manning back in 19...
So I go through that whole spill. I start off, I'm on a whole different level. I'm already putting on a show. And CBS Sports is 22 seconds into the video. And they're telling us that Tyler Shough is a first-round pick. They're telling us that Tyler Shough is the first-round pick since Archie Manning. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I think what they mean is it's the highest drafted quarterback since Archie Manning, which is true. Tyler Shough is obviously a second-round pick. Tyler Shough is obviously the 40th overall pick. Kelvin Banks was the Saints' first-round pick. So let's not get bogged down in CBS Sports having producers and editors and thousands of employees, and they just can't keep up with the face of the franchise.
1971, but Shough is backing himself with his experience and is embracing the opportunity ahead in New Orleans. He spoke a little bit about why he's backing himself on the St. Brown podcast earlier this week,
which we reacted to and covered. Great episode. We're going to skip ahead. We're going to skip ahead to the actual schedule reaction/review, which is what we wanted to hear. We don't need to hear about Tyler Shough and Chris Olave. We talk about that every day. So let's skip ahead.
So let's get to it. Let's get to that schedule prediction, because we saw them get out to a hot start in 2024, and then things went south fast. They opened this season playing 4 of their first 6 at home, which is good. But it's a schedule, guys, that includes 3 playoff opponents from a year ago. They finished 5-12 last year. Ryan, how do they do in 2025?
All right, so the Saints do have if you don't know, if you're not privy to how schedules are made, the last place team in the division gets an easier schedule than the first place team, right? It just makes sense. They don't want to stack bad teams with tough schedules. So the Saints do theoretically have an easier schedule this year because they were last in the division. Now we have it all pulled up. Their win total's 5.5. We're on DraftKings now. If you look at it here, Saints are plus 5.5 against the Cardinals at home. They're plus 7 against the Niners at home. They are plus 6.5 on the road to Seattle. They are plus 12.5 on the road against Buffalo. They are plus 1.5 against the Giants at home, plus 3 at home to the Patriots, plus 7.5 on the road to the Bears, plus 5.5 at home to the Bucks, 9.5 on the road to the Rams, 4.5 on the road at the Panthers, 2.5 at home to the Falcons, 6 on the road to the Dolphins, plus 9.5 on the road to the Bucks, plus 1.5 at home against the Panthers, minus 1.5, the only game that they're currently favored, at home to the Jets. Let's see, and then we keep going here. Plus 5.5 on the road against the Falcons, and plus 3.5 on the road against the Titans. All right, so that's where they're sitting right now. 5.5 is the over/under for the win totals on the season. We won 5 games last year. Now I want to show you this chart. So this is from last year. How wrong were NFL win total futures markets in 2024? The standard deviation is 3.3 games. Okay, so if you're doing, I don't want to get into deep math here, but so the Z-score, or the standard deviation, is how many turns off of the average, whatever the data set is. So according to this is the highest since 1999 that the win totals have been off. So we can assume the range for every team on average is 3-ish games, 3 to 4 games. Okay, whether worse or better. That's what we can assume. Somewhere in that range. All right. And if you think about it, it makes sense because a lot of this is based on last year. A lot of this is based on how the teams looked last year, what was going on last year, and they're not factoring in all the changes. All right. So, like for the Saints, last year they were 5-12. This year they have a 5.5 win total. How can you factor in? How can you quantify how good of a head coach Kellen Moore is? How good Tyler Shough may be? How good Kelvin Banks may be? How good Trevor Penning may be at left guard? How good Brandon Staley as a DC may be? It's impossible. All right. So, dependent on how all that works out, like we saw with the Commanders last year, their win total was 6.5. Okay, they won 12 games because you can't factor in how good Jaden Daniels is going to be. You can't factor in how Dan Quinn's going to work as head coach. You can't factor in any of that stuff, right? The Vikings were 7. They won 14 games. They were 7 wins ahead of their win-loss. Okay, conversely, you look at a team like the Niners, they had an 11.5, and they won 6 games. Why? Because it's impossible to quantify or to expect or to predict the rash of injuries that they had. Okay, so that's why win totals, and you can see across the board, every team is basically way better or way worse than their predicted number. Okay, so keep that in mind too. So just because the Saints have a 5.5 win total doesn't mean we have to find the number right there at 5.
They're going to get a little better, Haley. They're going to win 6 games this time around. And if you look at the schedule, I had them going 6-11.
Okay.
You look at the schedule there, those first 4 games.
Okay, so 6-11 is what we had the first go-round at this, the first go-round at, and when we looked at the schedule. Not a lot has changed as far as the odds and the spread. They certainly will change once the season starts, and really once preseason starts. But 6, I feel like, is a good number. You look at your divisional games, I like to give splits across the board on the divisional games. I think this year we did not split the Buccaneers games, but some of those games at home, some of the divisional games, I think 6-11 is a comfortable record. It's a comfortable prediction. So I don't mind this at all.
4 losses, as Sully mentioned. That Week 4 game is Tyler Shough's birthday, and get to go to Buffalo and face Josh Allen. I do have him winning the Giants and the Patriots in back-to-back weeks. But of all the teams I have them beating, none of those teams had winning records last year. The closest were the Falcons and the Dolphins. And those, you have to sort of squint to see those games as wins. I do have the Panthers sweeping them. We talked about Carolina yesterday, and I'm riding the Bryce Young train, either down the road or off the cliff. We'll find out together. But I think, as Sully sort of alluded to, there's a lot of room for improvement with this roster, and they're with a first-year head coach, a young head coach, and an unsettled quarterback situation. So 1 win improvement from a year ago. And
so my big thing with this team is they were so bad last year because of the injuries, because of the coaching turmoil, because of all that happened. I mean, not only just injuries to Carr, but injuries to the offensive line, injuries to the wide receivers, injuries on the defense, injuries to Taysom Hill. So much happening They still win 5 games. They still are competitive even at the end of the year. I mean, Spencer Rattler and MVS almost beat the Commanders, right? So there was something there. You get all of the players back. You get Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Eric McCoy, all the players that were hurt last year, besides Derek Carr, obviously. You get a much better coaching staff across the board. We didn't even have a DC after Dennis Allen got fired. Like, Joe Wood steps in, whatever, but it's just complete turmoil, okay? Throw in the draft class. You get 9 players coming in. Justin Reed, Brandon Cooks, like I said, all the returning starters. So that's why I think the team is going to be better. That's why I think the team has to improve, just the team. That doesn't mean necessarily the win-loss will improve, but I think it's impossible. It's impossible to say that the team will be worse than last year. That's like a big thing. That's a big thing that I'm having pushback on. When I see people in the comments who are like, well, this team's going to be worse than last year. It's like, well, how? Why would they be worse than last year? How could they possibly be worse than last year? We know how bad some of the players were last year. We are upgrading across like 10 different positions just from players that are returning. So they can't be worse than last year. We have better coaches. We have better everything.
By the way, this team hasn't been to the playoffs since 2020 when Drew Brees and Sean Payton were there. You mentioned Bo Nix. So it's been a minute since they found their way to postseason football.
Look at Wilson being the Friday optimist over here with the New Orleans Saints. I am not the optimist for this team. I have them going 3-14, number 1 overall pick. This is kind of the road they're going down. I struggled to find wins on this roster. I'm with you, Wilson, in that week 5 game against the New York Giants. That's going to be a win. I think they can split with the Carolina Panthers, winning their game at home.
All right, so okay, let's talk about the range. As you see on this, guys, and a lot of win-loss predictions is throwing a dart, and a lot of it is nonsensical. Just in just how it is. And this is a good example of that, where he has us beating the Titans on the road. Okay, we're 3.5-point dogs on the road at Tennessee. But he has us losing to the Jets at home, and we're 1.5-point favorites at home. So it shows you where it's just this weird, like, why do you have this game as a win? Why do you have this game as a loss? It's almost impossible to explain. This Jets game, if you have us beating the Titans on the road, and you have us beating the Giants at home, and you have us beating the Panthers at home, why would you have us losing the Jets game? The Jets game, if you look at just the numbers, is the one game you should circle and say, okay, I'm starting here. I'm starting with the win. Okay. Now let's go back and look at the spreads. Anything 3 and under, I think, is a coin flip. I think that is what justifies a coin flip in the NFL. If it's within a field goal, anything can happen. You're talking about 1 turnover. You're talking about 1 fumble. You're talking about 1 freak play, a missed field goal, quite literally, a drop pass. A field goal is a coin flip. Okay, so let's look at the Saints schedule again. We'll do it real quick. How many coin flips do they have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we'll call it 6. So they have 6 coin flips, okay, from just right now. And these numbers can change. Remember, like, these numbers can move around. So just right now, they have 6 coin flips, which kind of lines up, right? Those are the games where it's like, okay, they can win these games. I think if you're looking at a range, bottom would be 3. How do I get to that? Simple math. You have 6 coin flips. A coin flip is 50%. 50% of 6 is 3. So if we use that math, which is incredibly crude back of the napkin math, we'll say the Saints have a floor of 3. Okay. Now their win total is 5.5. What did we learn earlier in the video? The standard deviation for win totals is around 3.5, somewhere in there. So if our win total is 5.5, then we can assume the top end of the range is 8.5. Okay. So, which kind of lines up with this schedule. You look at the coin flips, and some of the games that we didn't include in the coin flips are some of those Buccaneers games, the Bears game, a couple of the Falcons games, right, were not considered coin flips. We'll see the ones that are, yeah, the Falcons game is not considered one. The Cardinals game is not considered one. The Bears game is not considered one. The Buccaneers game is not considered one. The Rams game on the road at Carolina is not considered one, which could easily be a win. On the road at Miami is not considered one. So all those games, and on the road to Atlanta. So all those games that are not considered coin flips, that goes into that top end range where if you're better than you think they are and they're worse than they are, and you steal a game here, you steal a game there, you push that up. So that gives us a range of 8.5 at the high end, 3-ish at the bottom end, and then a median of 6. Okay, so now I feel pretty good about looking at the season through the lens of that. Right now, you have that range, you have that window. So now you're seeing, okay, how do we feel on a week-to-week basis as we start to see players play, as we start to see who our starting quarterback will be, as we start to see all that, you start to go up and down that range. And then you also see other teams. Like you look at, like Bryce Young might be absolutely horrific again. Okay, well then you guys start dropping the Panthers. And that all of a sudden, that road game against Carolina becomes a coin flip. And your win total goes up and down, right? So it's all about ranges. It's all about math at this point. That's what we're trying to do.
Possibly take down the Tennessee Titans if Cam Ward isn't that #1 overall pick. You can maybe even talk me into that Week 18 game against the Atlanta Falcons if they're resting starters. We don't know what their season's going to look like. But overall, I don't think that this is going to be a competitive football team. Like you just said, we've just talked about it. Questions at quarterback, a first-time NFL head coach in Kellen Moore. I just don't know where they can grind out multiple wins or winning streaks in this schedule. You talked about that first month, but even if you kind of pick through it, it's difficult. I like them last place in the NFC South. I like them under their win total. This team not going to be very good. They're rebuilding.
Yeah, and Vegas agrees with you, Tyler. You see the odds there. Saints sitting at the second shortest at plus 425. Ryan, it does bring up an interesting conversation, though, because you have Arch Manning going #1 in your latest mock draft for next year.
And we know he will not be in the draft.
We know the connections that the Manning family has with the Saints. Producer Noah, by the way, also pointed out that Garrett Nussmeier, his dad, is now currently the offensive coordinator in New Orleans as well. So it seems like there's maybe a game plan already in place here. You just heard Tyler say he thinks the Saints are going to get a #1 pick next year. What are you thinking about when it comes to these built-in connections already with who could be the quarterback potentially next year if Shough does phase out?
Okay, we're not going to listen to this. We're not going to listen to Arch Manning talk. Not on a Monday. All right, ladies and gentlemen, get on down below. Where are you lining up for the Saints season win total right now? I'm thinking 6 to 8 is where I'm living. We'll continue to do more versions of this as the lines move. Like I said, once preseason happens, we'll start to get a better feel of some of these games. Like this Patriots game could flip. I think 7.5 at Chicago is a lot. Plus 4.5 on the road to Carolina. As bad as Carolina was last year, this is giving a lot of respect. I don't think Carolina should be a 4.5 point favorite to anybody. So some of these games are kind of crazy. Like Miami depends on who the quarterback is, right? So these will change. These numbers will change. These numbers will change very fast and very, very rapidly. So you can only put so much faith into it. But I think somewhere in that neighborhood, bottom end 3, top end 8, I think sounds about right. So let me know in the comments what you think. Thank you very much thank you very much for watching. Shout out Albert, and I will see you in the next video.